message. We have important issues before us. Is here, and in 1 month, they'll be going home. And we ask before they do that they close the revolving passing legislation to increase the criminal penalties for illegal gun possession, and also that they fix the broken bond system in our courts. It is ineffective. We have some people today who will speak to you. First, Mark Keel, Chief of SLED, and then Chief Kevin Cornett, Chief of the Isle of Palms. Solicitor Scarlett Wilson wanted to be with us today, but can't make it. But she's with us in message. Chief?
Governor, thank you. As I have said numerous times recently, I'm concerned about the increasing number of murders in young people with guns in our state. Gangs, drugs, and criminals' easy access to guns continue to play a significant role in the violence that we've seen in South Carolina. The shooting that occurred on Isle of Palms Friday afternoon and others like it should never be acceptable. Unfortunately, we've become all too familiar with the deadly impact of young people and repeat offenders with guns. Just yesterday, and I'd refer to this poster board over here, I received a request from Chief Andrew Gilreath of Folly Beach PD to provide assistance to an event that was located on social media that, as you can see, is supposed to take place on April 13th. At the top of that poster board there, you see BYOB, bring your own bottle, and BYOG, bring your own gun. I will tell those that are organizing this event that this behavior will not be tolerated. In 2021, there were 566 murders in South Carolina, the most ever recorded since we've been keeping records. Of those 566 murders, 322 were committed by people under the age of 25. 59 of those were committed by individuals under the age of 18. We have seen murders increase 52.2% over the last 10 years. Weapons law violations increased 4.2% in 2021 and 80.8% over the last 10 years. 2021 marks 8 straight years where we've seen an increase in weapons law violations. 91% of weapons law violations included firearms, and at least 76% of those were handguns. In 2021, there were 9,728 weapons law violations. Of those, 5,117 were committed by people under the age of 25, and 1,435 of those were committed by individuals under the age of 18. The criminal justice system only works when every part of the system works together to protect our citizens. Law enforcement officers are increasingly encountering armed repeat offenders across the state who are federally prohibited from possessing firearms, but who are not prohibited by state law. This must change. It is past time to give law enforcement the tools that we need to arrest felons who are caught possessing firearms in the state of South Carolina. South Carolina needs a true felon in possession of firearms statute that local and state law enforcement can enforce. We must hold violent, repeat offenders accountable while they're out on bond. All too often, law enforcement officers make good arrests only to find the offender received a low bond and are out terrorizing the same community that they came from the next morning. This must stop. We will continue to work with Governor McMaster and the Governor's office and the General Assembly to pass meaningful legislation with the goal of keeping our citizens safe. We are encouraged by the work of both bodies, the House and the Senate, on fentanyl trafficking, drug-induced homicide, bond reform, and felon in possession of firearms legislation. But we must all work together to combat crime in our communities across South Carolina, and that means working as elected officials, our criminal justice system partners, and community leaders. We must have positive community partnerships, interaction, support, and investment to truly make an impact on crime in our state. This cycle of violence that we're experiencing in South Carolina and across the nation must stop. Thank you.
Chief Cornett?
Good morning. As most of you know by now, Isle of Palms on Friday had an incident Friday afternoon involving a group of individuals that came out, and while most of them might have been peaceful when they gathered, several individuals came out with the intent to commit a crime. Several of those individuals came out and they brought weapons. When we live in an environment where paradise can be struck by this crime, where people are shot just spending their time on the beach trying to relax, it opens the eyes to everybody that this is not a problem that's specific to one area. It's everywhere. And throughout my career, I've worked to arrest individuals for committing violent crimes, and many times seen them out the next day or following weeks. It is time that we give law enforcement in our state the tools that we need to keep our community safe. If we come together and we have bond reform, where individuals who commit violent crimes are not allowed to walk out of jail the following day, or those that commit a crime, a violent act, while they're out on bond, get put back in jail and stay in jail. When we do that, we protect our community, we protect our children. When we enhance penalties for those that commit those weapon violations, so that every time they don't get to just have a small charge, it's the same consistent penalty or downplayed to something else, when we can hold them accountable with enhanced penalties, that's where we can hit the crime. If we want to stop and we want to make our community safe, this is our chance. This is our opportunity. We need to seize this chance, and we need to make sure that we take the fight to the criminals and that we make them answer for the crimes that they are committing, and we hold them accountable for those crimes.
Thank you. Well, as you've heard, we had a tragedy in the Isle of Palms, and we've had others over the years, and there are many tragedies occurring around the country today. But it's time, clearly now the time to act in South Carolina. The General Assembly is here. These issues have been discussed for years. We've had press conferences, meetings, hearings, and it is clear that we do not have the accountability that we need. We know from history that one who will commit a crime will hesitate to do it if he or she believes that they will be punished, not that they will just be caught, not that they will just be prosecuted, because often those, in the first place, often we can't find them. We know for a fact that in just looking at rapes, looking at domestic violence, less than 50% or so of those crimes are even reported. And there are many others that are not reported for various reasons. We know that the crime rate is high, but we know that if a crime is reported, an individual has to be found and arrested, then that individual has to be charged. Then we wait on the court, and sometimes months pass, sometimes years pass, witnesses disappear, the strength of the case weakens, and you don't get a conviction. But if there is a conviction, it may be appealed. If it's appealed, it may be reversed, and it's all over, and the criminal is generally out on the street awaiting that result and committing more crimes. We had a call today with Sheriff Lott of Richland County, who said they were in the process of arresting a man who had just shot and killed another. That is, he allegedly had shot and killed another. And that man was on bond for murder. He will be charged with murder. He was on bond for murder. Now that doesn't make any sense to anybody. So here we are today. The legislature is fully aware of all of this, and it is time, before they leave at the end of this session, for them to slam that revolving door shut on repeat criminals and enhance and have enhanced and increasing penalties for crimes involving illegal guns. What are illegal guns? If you're underage, that's an illegal gun. We believe that an illegal gun was involved in the shooting that took place at Mount Pleasant. Also, we know that at least one of those who is believed to have been involved in the incident, or at least was present, was underage, 16 years old. That's an illegal gun. If you touch it and you're underage, that's an illegal gun. Also, there are different types of convictions that make that gun an illegal gun. Also, if it is a stolen gun, it is illegal. You can't have it. You can't possess it. How do we know it's stolen? When they get stolen, the owners often will call the police. They fill out a police report, and that goes into the system, the NCIC, which is, and others. So those are stolen guns. If the serial numbers are obliterated, that is a stolen gun. If you have one in your possession, take it to the police department and get rid of it right away, because it is a stolen gun, and there are penalties. Also, if you have been adjudged incompetent by a court in South Carolina and you have a handgun, that is an illegal gun. So what do? We have to have graduated felony penalties for second and subsequent illegal gun possession, no bond, and no release or parole. That's what we have to have it. Today, if it is your fifth illegal gun, your fifth gun crime, there's no enhancement of the penalty. Why do we do that? Whether it's your first offense or your 10th offense, it's the same penalty. And by the way, if it's the second or third or fourth offense, what are you doing out committing another offense anyway? You ought to be in jail. So that's why we have to see that the magisterial system, that we have bond reform as well. We have bonding companies today that are letting people out with no bond, with low cash bond. Sometimes they get out with a $25 bond, which is absurd. We have to do what the law already allows, and that is we have to estreat those bonds. What does that mean? If it's a bondsman or a relative or a deed of a house that is given to satisfy a bond, if that defendant disappears, that bond needs to be estreated. That means the money is taken or the house is sold, and there has to be a penalty for that bonding company when the criminal disappears. There have been numerous attempts or new conversations about this, about the forfeiture of bonds, but that has not worked. So what we have to do, we don't need to create any more criminals. We are very conscious of the Second Amendment. It is not the legal average citizen, the honest citizen, that's causing these crimes. We know that there are about 20% of the criminals, whom we know who they are, who commit about 80% of the crimes. And we know even those that we don't know, they commit them over and over and over. So before that General Assembly goes home in May, they need to pass bond reform, and they need to see that we slam that revolving door and that we have graduated penalties for committing these crimes with these illegal guns. There's no excuse for not doing that. And as I say, we're conscious of the Second Amendment. We don't need to create new criminals. We've got enough of them already. What we need to do is control and hold those accountable that we catch and we already know of. And to have repeat offenders, what do you tell the family of someone who had been caught, arrested, put in jail once, twice, 3 times, who then shows up and kills your loved one? What do you tell them? They know the system is broken. So we have an opportunity now. These circumstances have brought this to a head. We have the opportunity and the obligation now to see that we shut that revolving door and pass bond reform. Are there any questions?
Why do you think it's taking so long for bond reform to happen?
I think there are some constitutional questions involved in South Carolina and in the federal system. If it used to be in the federal system, if you were going to flee, that was the only reason you could deny bond. what that meant in the federal system is if you go out and be killing people but stay in here, there was the judges couldn't have a high bond on them. But that has been changed. In South Carolina, if it is a serious or a violent offense, then bond can be denied. That is, no bond. It is constitutionally allowable. If you have a person there that you believe is going to inflict more tragedy on the community, you don't have to let them out. The only question that comes up then is they need to have, of course, a speedy trial. So that means we have to move those cases along. But there have been conversations, but we've got to get a grip on it. We see now, it's clear from the evidence, it's mounted, and we've had in recent weeks and recent months and again, just recent days, that system is not working, so we can fix it. Any comment? Chief?
I would just say that as the governor said, these are two issues that we face all the time continually. Our folks at SLED that are out arresting fugitives every day. Last week, we arrested 15 fugitives. 7 of those fugitives had firearms on them. And we're seeing this over and over again. And they have to be held accountable. And we have to have individuals that, again, are committing violent crimes that when they get out on bond and they reoffend, then they shouldn't be back out on bond again. And again, it is a revolving door, and we have been seeing this for some time. And we certainly need help. General Assembly, again, we're optimistic that this year we've seen some encouraging signs that hopefully these bills will pass, and we look forward to that. Will be beneficial to our citizens.
Governor, if we keep more alleged criminals or criminals in jail waiting trial, more people would be waiting. And we've seen the conditions over how that's going. Are you worried about subsequent overcrowding issues and how we address those?
I'm less worried about overcrowding than I am about people getting killed. But there are other ways that the problem can be addressed. One is with the sophisticated techniques we have now. We had a good example of how these ankle monitoring systems can work. You may remember a few months ago we were having some shootings and some violence in Five Points. We had a meeting in this conference room behind us, and the chief of Columbia Police was there, Chief Keel was there, Sheriff Lott was there, others were there, and Jerry Adger was there from Probation, Pardon, and Parole. And many of his parolees have ankle bracelets, and they are required to stay out of certain areas, and they can be monitored instantly to know where they are. Well, what Sheriff Lott suggested was that we not allow parking within a certain perimeter around Five Points. Why is that? Because the shooters like to be close to their vehicles. They may have to make a quick getaway, or they may keep some firearm in the vehicle. So if you eliminate parking from the area, then that will cut down on that likelihood. But also, Jerry Adger, Director Adger, issued an instant message to all of his ankle bracelet people saying, if you go in this area, your parole will be immediately revoked. And guess what? The shootings, we had quiet there for several days during that very bustling period. So the federal studies have been conducted that show this is in the federal system where there are not as many violent criminals. Most of those are white-collar type criminals. But there were, in the federal system, a study showed that with effective ankle monitoring bracelet, that the recidivism went down. I think it was about 30 or 40%, but it was a market. So we can do that here in South Carolina, but again, the bondsmen are obligated to keep track of the criminals, of the charged criminals, of the defendants. But apparently they're not doing it. So that is why we need bond reform. We need to see that those who are dangerous, who are likely to, and we have evidence that they're going to hurt people again and again and again, as they already have, don't let them out on bond, period. Now, they have to wait in jail. Well, they earn the right to be in jail. Now, they'll get a fair trial. But in the meantime, they should not be out committing those crimes, hurting our honest, hardworking men, women, and children.
Can you provide an update on the suspects in the Isle of Palm shooting? And specifically, do we have any information that would suggest that any of them were out on bond, the individuals who were involved in the shooting?
We don't really have an update as far as the suspects right now. We are diligently investigating with our partners from state and federal levels and local levels. What we do know is that Friday we arrested a 16-year-old kid with a stolen gun. And we arrested an 18-year-old kid for carrying a firearm. At the end of the day, this is about making sure that they're held accountable and that they understand that when you commit a crime and carry a weapon that's used for violence, that you're going to answer for that and that there's going to be repercussions.
In terms of stolen guns, how are these offenders getting these weapons? Are they getting them out of cars, houses, and how can the community be aware to be educated and prevent some of that stuff?
I think Chief Cornett will back me up on this. The majority of these stolen guns are being stolen out of cars. Obviously, there's home break-ins as well. But we have so many citizens that carelessly leave their guns in vehicles at night, sometimes locked, sometimes not unlocked. We see video from neighborhood cameras where individuals will go through the neighborhood, not even breaking into cars, but just checking the door handles to find a car that's unlocked that they go into where somebody's left a gun or a laptop or whatever it may be that they can steal. And unfortunately, a lot of folks don't remember they left their guns in the car. They may not miss them the next day. They fail to report that stolen gun to law enforcement. And so nobody knows to look for them. In this case, with the 16-year-old, I guess fortunately somebody had reported that gun stolen. So when that gun was recovered by Isle of Palms police, they were able to run it through the National Crime Information Center and determine that it was a stolen weapon. But, you know, we encourage the safe carrying of firearms and also the storage of firearms. And leaving them in your car is not a safe place to leave them. And we see that over and over again. I would tell you the big majority of stolen handguns are coming out of vehicles that are broken into.
Chief Cornett, is the Isle of Palms concerned about losing tourism dollars if stricter gun regulations are not passed?
I don't know that I would say that tourism dollars are what we're focused on here. What we're focused on is the safety of our community, the safety of all the communities in South Carolina, just making this a safer state by giving those penalties for violent offenders.
And I'd like to remind, this is not creating new crimes. This is just enhancing and allowing for the graduation up of repeat offenders. The honest citizens, law-abiding citizens, have a constitutional right to keep and bear firearms, and we are not going to intrude on that. It's not our purpose to make more criminals, to make laws that make more people criminals. We want to control those that we have. We know who most of them are. And in the instances of repeat offenders who are out on bond committing more crimes, we know exactly who they are. We know their social security number, their blood type, where they live, and everything else. Why are we letting them out to do it again? We need to stop.
If we do see pushback from legislation, I guess what are the next steps in terms of the summer is coming, more kids will be out of school, what are these next steps?
The next steps, well, it's what I mentioned a moment ago. We've got a month left in this session. Now, I mean, we've seen what can happen. It just happened most recently here at the Isle of Palms. We can't let those things keep happening. So if the criminal conduct, if the people understand, if those who would break the law, those would hurt others, those would do these dangerous things, if they know that there will be repercussions to them, then that will dissuade many of them from doing it. Now, there's some going to do it anyway, and there's nothing we can do about them. But right now in our system, it takes so long to convict someone, it takes so long, and the chances that the conviction will be upheld are multitudinous. What we have to do is, these people that we have in our hands already, that have already been arrested, have already spent some time in jail, and are out on bond, we know who they are. Let's stop them from committing more and more crimes, and let's make the penalties graduate up so that they are effective. If it's the second, third time they've committed a crime with a gun or illegal guns, then the penalty needs to be enhanced. I tried to accumulate a number of the stories from over the years of people who were committing violent crimes, usually manslaughter, murder, those kind of things, rapes, and you probably would not be astonished, but you would be concerned. We all see it, and the day passes, and we turn to something else. But when you set them out all in a pile of the articles and the events, and these law officers can tell you that see it over and over again, it screams out for action. And this action that we are recommending that our General Assembly take is a major, mighty step in the right direction.
As it stands now, for these young offenders, when they commit a violent crime, how much time can they possibly face? If someone as young as maybe 13, if they commit a violent act with a weapon, how much time could they put?
Well, you have a lot of mental, juvenile justice. I mean, if you are old enough, there are cases, even though you're under 18, where it is determined that it was an adult crime, that it should face the adult penalty. But that's what the Department of Juvenile Justice is for. Chief?
The only thing I'd say is, we're seeing younger and younger people. When you see 12-year-olds shooting another 12-year-old, 15-year-olds shooting one another, and most of those individuals do not end up being sent to adult court or being tried as an adult. And so the penalties for them obviously are much less. And I was going to say with this, Chief Holbrook testified at a hearing the other day about a study the National Institute of Health did some years ago that said that, and it was a Swedish study, but 15% of the population committed the crimes, 15%. And 1% of the population committed 63% or were held accountable for 63% of the violent crime convictions. Those are the ones we're talking about. Again, we're not talking about law-abiding citizens that have a right to bear arms. We're talking about those individuals that continue to recommit crimes over and over again. That it's a revolving door in our jails and our detention facilities, and we keep seeing them over and over again. We keep seeing them on unlawful carry violations that our law is not tough enough to deal with. And we need the graduated penalties, as the governor has said, so that first offense, okay, they get one penalty. Your second chance, you're going to get a little tougher penalty. Third offense, you're going to face a more harsh penalty. And that's what we need in South Carolina for it to be a real deterrent to people unlawfully carrying firearms today.
Chief Kuehl, you mentioned something earlier. I wanted you to elaborate and provide a little bit more understanding. You said, and I think we all know, felons, federally, they're prohibited from having firearms, but you said that it's not illegal in the state of South Carolina. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yes, so
What needs to change there?
what I would tell you is this, is that in South Carolina, we have the way our unlawful carry law is currently written. Basically, if you're a felon, if you're an individual caught with a gun, and that felony is in 16160 in our statute, which is a violent crime statute, then you are unlawfully carrying. But we have many felonies in our state that are not listed in 16160. And like shooting into I think a dwelling house is not listed in 16160. But I mean, I think that, we talk about our home being our castle, and, but yet it's not a felon. It would not be illegal for someone who shoots into a residence to be in violation of our unlawful carry law. So what we need is in federal law, any crime that is over 2 years, that has a penalty of more than 2 years, is a felony, is listed as a felony, and you're prohibited from being able to possess a firearm or ammunition. And what we're looking at is this statute that the House has passed has accountability for that, and that's what we're hoping, we can see some progress on.
But as of right now, let's say a felon shoots up a house and.
If it's not listed in, again, those crimes that are in 16160 are the crimes, they would not be subject to that. We have many felonies on our books that are not, would not be subject to under our current unlawful carry law.
We have time for 2 more questions.
Chief Gill, you mentioned Chief Holbrook and Chief Cornett, if you want to answer this as well. But he and a few other chiefs testified last week. They were concerned about removing the training requirement for the constitutional carry. Are you concerned that passing that and not, requiring people to have training could also lead to more unsafe incidents like this?
I am concerned about it. Again, my position on this is, well documented. I've read it myself in newspapers accounts of how I feel about constitutional carry. But again, what we need in South Carolina right now, and I will tell you the reason that law enforcement for the most part has sort of taken a neutral position is we desperately need an unlawful carry law with graduated penalties that hold those that are out committing violent crimes accountable. And we hope, again, and pray that this year will be the year that we will get that. It is something that will make it safer for our citizens and make it safer for our state. And again, do I have concerns about that? Yes, I have concerns about it. But I have equal or more concerns about not holding those accountable that should be held accountable for violating our unlawful carry law.
Governor, those penalties that Chief Gill just mentioned are part of the constitutional carry bill.
Right.
Should they be, if they're that important and needed that bad, should they be in a freestanding legislation or not tied to constitutional carry?
As long as they pass it, it doesn't matter where it is.
But I mean, couldn't concerns some have in the Senate about constitutional carry perhaps hurt the chances of some of these provisions?
Well, I guess if this doesn't pass, then we will urge them to keep on, but they need to pass it as it is.
Would you veto the Senate permitless carry bill that does not include felon in possession?
Beg your pardon?
The Senate version of the permitless carry bill does not include the felon in possession provisions that the House passed. Would you
Well,
veto that?
I like that less than